In the past few days, you might have seen big signs and billboards saying G20. You might have seen it on the news channels where Indian leaders have been welcoming leaders from abroad. What exactly is the G20? What is the G20 summit and why was G20 conceived? What is the importance of G20 in today's world? And what are the economic benefits that India can derive out of it? These are some of the topics that we'll be discussing in today's video. Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. I'm Ayushi, I'm an economist and I've worked with the Government of India for the past 7 odd years. I've also worked as a public policy consultant, and on my channel I talk about various issues related to economics and public policy. So let's dive right into the video. G20 or Group of 20 is a group. It's a collection or it's a bloc of the world's 20 largest economies. This group was basically conceived as a bloc which brought together industrialized economies as well as developing nations to discuss issues of global importance. Now these issues could be economics and financial issues. It could also be other issues related to environment, energy, sustainable development, climate change, and so on and so forth. As a group, it is huge. It means that these 20 economies constitute around 85% of the world's GDP, around 75% of all the trade that happens across the globe, around 66% of the global population, and 60% of the total land area. This means that this unit is huge, and the impact it can have on the global economy is also huge. Now let's briefly discuss about the structure of G20. G20 has 20 economies. The presidency of the G20 is rotated among these economies on an annual basis. India holds the presidency of the G20 from 1st December 2022 till 30th November 2023. And probably that is why you have been hearing about G20 very frequently over the last few months, because various meetings have been conducted for G20 across Indian cities over the last few months. The theme for this year's G20 summit is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means one earth, one family, one future. Another point to note is that while G20 is an intergovernmental organization, it is a multilateral forum. There are also bilateral meetings which happen between countries during this G20 summit. And some of these meetings have actually resulted in historic agreements being signed between two countries. Now let's talk about the history of G20. Why was G20 actually conceived? G20 was the result of the financial and economic embargo that we saw in the 1990s. The word of the day is embargo. Do let me know what you mean by embargo in comments. So basically 1990s was a difficult period for the global economy. A lot of countries, especially the East Asian countries, were going through financial and economic turmoil. The Asian financial crisis, which I'll talk about in my next video, was one such event. And the G20 was established to tackle these economic and financial problems. There was also a growing representation that the developing economies were not adequately represented in the global forum, and hence a need for an international forum was felt where these issues could be addressed, and G20 came into being. In 1999, the finance ministers and the central bank governors of these 20 economies met for the first time in Germany. And in 2008, when the world recession struck, this G20 was raised to a summit level. Since then, they have been meeting every year for the G20 summit. So coming to the next topic, what are the kind of issues that are discussed in the G20 summit? And some of these terms you might also come across in newspapers, so this will help you understand those issues better. Broadly speaking and in very simple terms, the issues are divided into the Sherpa track and the finance track. And what is a Sherpa? Sherpa is basically a representative of that particular economy or the country. So this Sherpa track consists of issues which are non-financial and non-economic in nature. These could range from environment, energy, sustainable development, climate change, and food security, and similar kind of issues. Now these Sherpas or the representatives, they basically carry out the meetings. They plan and implement whatever is decided in these meetings on a regular basis. The second track is basically the finance track. As the name suggests, finance track is issues related to finance and economics. There is a lot of technical work involved, and there are expert working groups which are formed who discuss and deliberate upon the issues which are affecting the global economy. And finally, a broad list of action to be taken is formed, which are further subsequently discussed and acted upon. Additionally, there are also thematic meetings which are held. Now, these thematic meetings are basically interministerial meetings where ministries such as the Labor Ministry, Agriculture Ministry, Tourism Ministry, they get involved, they discuss about issues wherein they can cooperate and work together on a global level. Now, these were basically the facts around G20. What is more important is for us to understand what is the significance of G20 and why is it important in today's world. So let's talk about the significance of G20. The first point relates to global economic stability. As I mentioned, the G20 is a big unit. It comprises of 85% of the world's GDP, around 75% of the world's international trade, and around 66% of the global population. This means that when it comes together, it discusses topics which can affect the entire economy. The second point relates to policy coordination. Now, G20 is basically a platform for world leaders and policymakers to come together to brainstorm, to discuss about various economic policies and work in tandem with each other to design those policies. So this helps in addressing common challenges and promoting sustainable economic development of the global economy. The third point is related to finding a common solution for these global challenges. Now, as I told you, various global challenges or issues are discussed, which can relate to corruption, food security, climate change, sustainable development. Now, all these issues have a lot of different solutions. And there is no one simple sure-shot solution to any of these issues. Now, these G20 economies, they come together to find solution to these issues. Now, the fourth point relates to international financial architecture. This is a very, very important point because G20 economies are the 20 largest economies of the world. They are the front runners for any kind of financial crisis that occurs. So they have to come together and form a coordinated policy response to any kind of financial difficulties or financial instability that the world might be seeing. The fifth point relates to inclusive growth and development. Now, growth and development, we all agree, is important, but it should be inclusive in nature. This means that nobody should be left behind. And hence, G20 also talks about poverty reduction, reducing income inequality, improving the employment and the employability of the people, and promoting an inclusive growth and development of these economies. All in all, G20 is important because it helps all these countries to come together, to brainstorm, to discuss about various issues, to actually find solutions to the common challenges that the world is facing, and to improve the financial, economic, as well as social condition of the world economy. So what is India doing in this year's summit? So as the G20 host for 2023, India has been talking about issues which affect the emerging economies and the developing countries. They are collectively called as the Global South. India has been discussing issues related to rising debt levels, high inflation, food insecurity, and climate change, which is affecting a large number of nations. Now, coming to the last section of the video, which is what is the impact that this G20 summit will have on India. Now, I'm going to talk about few points which are related to economics as well as international relations. So let's delve into it one by one. The first is the economic impact. When these 20 large countries come together, it has a direct impact on India's economy, on its trade policies, as well as the investment climate of the country. The outcomes of the G20 summit can affect market sentiments, the foreign direct investment, as well as the economic cooperation between India and the other economies of the G20. And hence, it can boost India's economic growth in the future. So the second point relates to India's international standing or the diplomatic advantage that India can get out of it. Hosting the G20 summit actually helps India showcase its diplomatic capabilities and establish a global leadership. It provides an opportunity for India to strengthen its position as a major player in international affairs and demonstrate its commitment to addressing global challenges. The third point is the policy influence that India can hold. As the presidency for the G20, India has set 6 thematic priorities for the summit: climate change, economic recovery, technology and innovation, sustainable development, women empowerment, and inclusive growth. The discussions and the outcomes of the summit on these particular issues can shape India's policies and initiatives in these areas, providing a roadmap for the future. The fourth point is related to the investment opportunities. The G20 summit attracts attention from foreign businesses and investors. The presence of world leaders and high-level discussions can create opportunities for India to attract foreign investment and forge new partnerships. The fifth point relates to knowledge sharing and learning. The G20 summit brings together leaders from diverse countries and backgrounds, which means that there is an opportunity for knowledge sharing and learning. India can benefit from the experiences and best practices shared from other countries, gaining insights into various areas such as technology, sustainable development, and women empowerment. The sixth point relates to collaboration and cooperation. The G20 summit fosters collaboration as well as cooperation among countries. India can engage with other G20 members to find common solutions to global challenges. This way, India can contribute to global initiatives and efforts that promote inclusive growth, sustainable development, and climate action, thus bolstering or boosting its image as a nation that wants to find solutions to challenges that affect the global economy. Now, of course, what is the kind of benefit that India can derive from the G20 summit depends on the outcomes of the summit, which are yet to be seen. India can potentially improve its economy. It can bring in more investments and FDI into the nation. It can also improve its diplomacy and the international relations with other countries. What do you think will be the outcome of the G20 summit and whether India will be able to achieve its targets? And do you think that G20 actually holds relevance in today's world? Please do let me know in the comments below, and if you would like me to make more such videos on similar topics, please do comment. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care. Bye.